This is the SUI coin 1-year overview reading for the year of 2024. It's currently January 6, 2024, 7:49 p.m. Eastern Time. SUI coin at the time of this reading is currently 0.84068 or just over 84 cents USD. And the shuffle video that we're about to play for you here in the lower left corner was created on December 9th, 2023 at 5:33 p.m. Eastern Time. That's this video right here. The overall theme and behavior for SUI in the year 2024, it's very similar. Its pattern is very similar to a lot of the 2024 readings where we're going back and forth several times between highs and lows. We see like a sideways rotation along key support on a multi-day scale that ends with a fast sudden move higher. And then there's also at least one prominent move higher on a 1-year chart scale that's followed by, like shortly thereafter, followed by a full retracement of that move. It makes like a triangular shape on a chart. So we'll see that at least once. It could be the same as the fast sudden move higher that ends the period of sideways rotation, or it could be like another move or both. We'll see as we get into the reading in more detail. Behavior around the highest high, there's a significant cross-reading congruency here at the highest high, which I'll talk about in more detail in the paid version, how the 1-year reading fits into the multi-year reading. But what we'll see is a lot of price change to and from this the highest high price level, this resistance level at the highest high. We'll go to and from it, like maybe multiple times, and that'll allow for us to trade both directions at separate times around that price level. Behavior around the lowest low in the midst of erratic behavior back and forth through the same price levels on a multi-year scale or on a 1-year chart scale. We should be revisiting the low multiple times within there, and it's exactly what it looks like. But before we go any further and get into the week-by-week chart behavior as well as the highs and the lows and all that stuff, I want to make sure that everybody is aware the whole purpose of the channel is to transmute some of the competitive energy of the stock market into goodwill. We do that by following the rule of karma for the channel, which is the unwritten agreement between the universe and anybody utilizing this information for personal gain. So in order to continue profiting from this information, the universe expects you to follow through on this. 5% of the profits from all profitable trades utilizing this information should be donated forward to one of these charities here on the resources tab of our website, Tarot for Traders. Or you can find your own charity or donate it to a homeless person or something like that. Just pay it forward. 5%. It guarantees abundance mentality. And then 5% of the profit should be donated back to the channel here at one of these links. If you're international, you can use Wise or you can use YouTube tips. That leaves you at 90% and gratitude mentality. That 90%, make sure to spend it out of love, keeping your conscience clear. As long as you follow those rules, you follow the rule of karma for the channel, the universe considers you an angel investor. It's going to send it back to you tenfold for following through. Blessings to all my angel investors. All right, so with the 1-year reading, it's important to understand you need to give it about the timing needs to be, in some cases, you'll need to give it plus or minus 2 weeks of wiggle room, because each card going left to right across the screen here represents about 2 weeks of time in the year 2024, but the energy of each card will not line up perfectly, in many cases will not line up perfectly with 2 weeks of time. There's cases where the time will be 100% throughout the entire reading. There's many cases like that. In some cases, you might have to give it plus or minus a little bit of wiggle room based on that factor there. But with that said, let's get into it. We have an important cash out opportunity at starting the year. If I had a 2023, I'd be able to see what that's about in more detail. But we have, it looks like a lowest low thus far and a prominent high or a highest high thus far in January. So we probably see a lot of price change early on in January and sideways rotation and or a low in early to mid-January. And looks like there's an unexpected move to the upside out of the low along a diagonal trend line, breaking through horizontal resistance on a multi-day scale to meet a second resistance before pulling back to somewhere between those two price levels. And then there's a sharp drop as we leave January, like the later part of January. There's a sharp drop back into what looks like significant troughs through the year again, with sideways rotation and a sharp drop early on in February that'll stand out in that period of sideways rotation. You see the orange correlation here to the Knight of Discs card, indicating we'll see this within close time proximity to the significant lows throughout the year. We'll see a correlation to that. And that indicates, in my opinion, that indicates sideways rotation on key support level, probably the same support. But the Hermit card in the low significator position for February's low indicates a revisiting of a support level that was recently a past opportunity. There's also a speaker near the low in February that whatever they're speaking about should be relied upon. It can be trusted, and it'll happen near the low. Out of that low and then into the later part of February, there's a pop and drop of a big move higher and a full retracement, similar to what the Lover card indicates, but not always exactly the same. It's like a pop and drop more than like a prolonged rally and then a prolonged decline. There's a prominent crest and a prominent trough there in February as well. It looks like the crest is near towards the later part of February, and it's followed by that drop, like a pop into the crest and then a drop out of that crest. This is a little tricky, but it looks like on the cusp of February, March, we might have a prominent peak on a 1-year chart scale again, and there's an important opportunity there with the Fool card that I'll talk about in more detail in the paid version, but it'll stand out amongst other opportunities throughout the 1 year of 2024. There's a trade opportunity there around the cusp of February, March as well. I'll talk about in the paid version, and there's trade opportunities early on in January as well. We'll talk about in the paid version. Mixed behavior near the March high, and it looks like this is probably, so we probably move higher out of February into a peak in early March, followed by a decline from that peak back down. And there's that orange there indicates sideways rotation along a key support level on a 1-year chart scale. That's important there. So we go from like this peak early in March into mixed behavior, and then it looks like we're probably back to that peak or a slightly lower peak, where it looks like we're back to another prominent peak there in the later part of March. There's a notable reversal and a trade opportunity there. Out of the March low, there's this big move to reach for a distant resistance, and we probably see the March high more than once is my sense. But crest on the cusp of March, April, and then a sideways fluctuating rally with a lot of ground covered from a trough early in April to a peak later in the later part of April, which will form with the sideways fluctuating rally, and then this fast sudden move higher that ends a rally along a diagonal diagonal trend line. It's a fast sudden move higher, and then a breakdown through that diagonal trend line with increasing volatility on the way down, taking us back into a prominent trough around the cusp of April-May, or in mid-May. But the April low is going to be a significant fake out shakeout of some kind, so that indicates that it's probably going to look like we'll go lower than we like. Look like we're going to continue to go lower, but instead we turn around or something like that. But we established support near this prominent trough early in the month of May, and that's followed by a big move higher standing out on a 1-year chart scale, followed by sideways rotation at a higher price level. And then there's this important resistance near the May high that's highlighted. It's resistance that we met many times before and failed to break through. From that resistance, there's a decline, a notable decline on a 1-year chart scale, taking us into a prominent trough in the later part of May. Near the May low, we should have a period of sideways bumping along resistance, maybe breaking through, but bumping along resistance sideways. So there's a trough early in May, there's a trough midway through May, and then it looks like there's a peak on the cusp of May-June. Big move out of the trough for May, all the way from the bottom of a range, out of a decline from the bottom of a range all the way to the top of a range on a multi-day scale or on a 1-year chart scale there, to a peak like the early part of June. We sell off from that peak down to and through support, do a U-shaped reversal below that support, and come back and reuse it as support, and that's like the behavior around the June high. The later part of June, there's a decline that increases with momentum moving forward into a prominent trough on a 1-year chart scale again. The June low will be within close time proximity to prominent peak for the year as well, and it'll form due to the halting of a bullish trend marked by sharp decline through key support. So looks like the June low is in the later part of June. Before we go any further, normally here, what I would do is I would take a look at the previous year's reading, but SUI, this is the first 1-year reading that we've done for SUI, so we don't really have anything to like look back at and test our accuracy, but you could go check out like 2,400 posts on YouTube that are free, and even the paid versions come out after the fact, so you can see what we said in the paid versions if you want to see what our accuracy is like. But the way that you would get the paid version, first off, what you get in the paid version first is information that you will not find anywhere else. It does not exist anywhere else prior to the time that it's talking about. This is the only place, because I'm the only crazy person crazy enough to take 23 years of his life and donate it to figuring out tarot cards and the patterns in relation to the stock market. But I did it. Believe it or not, I did it. And there's plenty of proof. That information is a serious edge for somebody who knows how to utilize it. And what's also important is you cannot find it anywhere else, meaning that nobody else will have that edge. It's super valuable. We talk about price level information. If we're able to extrapolate price level information, usually it's like relative to like highs and lows, relative to each other kind of price level information. Sometimes we actually get dollars, but that's all in the paid version. We also talk about the best trades that we see, the timing of those trades throughout the year, what trades to avoid, and what type of chart behavior on like a multi-day type of scale to look for as far as entry and exit into those trades to help kind of guide you in and out. We're not right all the time. We're right most of the time. A lot of the time we're right like the entire reading, but not all the time. You never want to trade like we are all the time. Even if we're right the entire time, something could still go wrong. So never trade like that. You never bet the house. But if you trade responsibly with this information, you should do pretty solid. We also talk about any trades that are relevant from like a multi-year standpoint. We take a look at the 7-year reading and how the cross-reading congruencies from 2024's reading fit into the 7-year reading, giving us a good idea where we are in the greater scheme of things. All that and the overall performance of SUI coin in comparison to Bitcoin throughout the same 2024 year period. In the paid version, a great way to support the channel. Definitely know the names of everybody that supports the channel this way. You guys are a huge part of the support for the channel, and you do it here at our services. As so many posts, click here to order a 1-year report. You specify the year you're interested in, specify the ticker or crypto, add to cart, and order. And that gets you a reading very, very similar to this with the type of information that we're talking about, plus all of the paid stuff. If it's a new ticker or crypto, it can take up to 3 weeks, so you want to plan ahead. If it's one that's already been out, like you saw the public version, then those are fast turnaround, like within 48 hours. All right, thank you again, guys. Let's get back into it. So we have this prominent move higher on a 1-year chart scale there in early July. It's followed by a full retracement. So we move higher through QE resistance on a 1-year chart scale. We stay above it briefly, and then we break back down through it with the same price level shortly thereafter. And it looks like we do that in the early to mid part. It's a little bit difficult to determine where in July it's like the early to mid part of July. The behavior on the July low, we have 3 crisscrosses back and forth through the same price level, and the third cross is to the upside, confirming a bullish trend. Usually when you see that as a low significator card, you'll see the low twice. So the July low, most likely we'll see it twice. We'll come out of it, we'll go back down, we'll come out of it again kind of deal. So probably early in the month, up through it, back down through it, and then up through it again in the later part of the month, and that's what it looks like. We have this peak here in the later part of the month. So usually 2 peaks and as well, but there's that important resistance level highlighted there in the later part of July where we kind of like flatten out, and then we successfully turn that resistance into support in the earlier part of August. There's another prominent peak on a 1-year chart scale in the later part of August. We have this period of volatility near the August high that ends with a fast sudden move higher, taking us into the August high, and then we have a failed attempt to break through key resistance and a decline through key support there from a prominent peak in the later part of August, taking us into a prominent trough and a lot of price change from an important price level in the later part of August. There's a lot of price change down through multiple support levels into a prominent trough on a 1-year chart scale there for September's low, and we'll see an important support level on a 1-year chart scale minimum, probably like a multi-year chart scale minimum here in September, and more trade opportunities there. There's mixed behavior, sideways fluidity, equal amounts of bulls and bears, inflow and outflow in the later part of September, so we go up and down, back and forth, but really kind of like sideways as we do that. And there's a prominent peak, it looks like on the cusp of September, October as well. The September high forms when there's a brief peak that's easily missed, followed by a decline through multiple support levels, and that's September high will be a prominent peak on a 1-year chart scale. There's a peak on the cusp of September, October, and then a slightly higher peak like in the earlier part of October, and then an even higher peak in mid-October, and then an even higher peak a little bit later in October. We have like this fast sudden move higher out of a trough in the early part of October, to, pushing the upper end of a range higher to reach the October high, and then we have this notable, I'm advised to be cautious, we have this notable decline to a prominent trough as towards the later part of October or as we go into November. Big move out of the October low. Also, we see that orange correlation, an important support level on a 1-year chart scale near the October low, and probably sideways rotation or some sort of tricky chart behavior in the later part of October. Could be multiple false tops or multiple false bottoms or both, or just some really tricky chart behavior. And then in the early part of November, we have a period of volatility and a sharp drop that stands out in that period of volatility. A failed attempt to break through key resistance. Prominent peak, it's in mid-November, followed by at the November high, and it's a failed attempt to break through key resistance. It'll be resistance that technicals would lead us to believe we're going to break through, but instead we turn around and we decline through that through key support that was probably established here in the early part of October. The November low forms when out of a decline, there's the end to that decline with a fast sudden move higher taking us to a prominent peak. And the high for November and the low for November are both within close time proximity to a high on a 1-year chart scale and a low on a 1-year chart scale. Prominent high or prominent low on a 1-year chart scale. The later part of, or mid to later part of November, we have like this rally into that resistance and then a decline with consecutively lower spikes up on the way down. That's the later part of November. And then in early December, the science card very often indicates an important peak or resistance level at the upper end of a range very often, but it'll be an important technical price level on a multi-year scale. And it'll also be near a prominent peak on a 1-year chart scale. It'll be a near overbought crest that we sell off from near the December high from multiple support levels. And it looks like it'll be like 3 pokes through that important price level, followed by a sharp drop, taking us into the low. And then out of the low, it looks like in the later part of December, we have a rally that increases with momentum moving forward in time. 2025 looks like a really significant move higher. Sometimes that's out of oversold territory, so not necessarily all bullish, but there'll be a really notable move to the upside in 2025 based on the adjustment card there. A really notable move into 2025. And that's SUI coin for 2024. Let me know what you think by hitting that like button. As always, make sure to follow that rule of karma. Do the channel a favor. If you like this info, please subscribe. But most importantly, make sure to follow that rule of karma. You know where to go. You know what to do. Blessings to all my angel investors. Stay tuned if you got the paid version.